Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Blue Chip Prospect. Today is the day where I want to be talking about that Habs center line. It's not looking so good for now, but all summer we've heard about having discussions about different players, different trade targets for the Montreal Canadiens, and I want to dive on that. So that is exactly what we'll be doing today. There's a lot of centers to look at. There's a lot of players that we could potentially acquire to play on that second line C. So let's dive in and let's look into it. First center that I want to talk about today is a center that I've been talked about all summer, and that guy is Mason Mctavish from the Calgary Flames. I think in some sense, he's a good player to acquire. In another sense, he's not a good player to acquire because Mason Mctavish, first, he's a left shot. We need left shot. In the faceoff circle, he's not that great. He's at 46%, but it's still not that bad. At 46%, you're basically average with the NHL. My problem with him is that he's 35 years old and he still has 4 seasons at $7 million, which is an enormous contract to acquire. Obviously, would have to trade probably Carey Price the other way and add a first in there and probably a prospect in there to get a player of that level and also unload Carey Price's contract. And do they actually want to trade that player? We're not so sure. I don't think they are a team that is trying to rebuild right now. They're probably trying to push for a playoff spot like they did last season. So I don't know if they actually want to trade that player. He's a good player, but he's probably a little bit too old and has too much money, too much time left on that contract for us to acquire it and for it to make sense for the Montreal Canadiens. Next, there are 2 players that I think the Habs could acquire from the Utah Mammoth, and those players are Nick Schmaltz and Barrett Hayton. If we start with Nick Schmaltz, we're talking about a guy that is probably not a natural center, but the guy did take about 300 or something face-off in the season. It's about the same thing as when people say they want to acquire Jared McCann. Like, Jared McCann is not a natural center either. But Nick Schmaltz is a 29-year-old player, still has 1 year on his contract at $5.8 million. In the face-off dot, he's at 49%, and basically, he's a consistent 60-point player. So offensively, he's a good player. Defensively, he's a good player, and he wins his face-off. Plus, he has a decent contract. The thing is that if you acquire that player, you need to sign that player because you're not going to give a first, and then you're going to give prospect, and then you're going to get nothing after a year. Doesn't work that way. At least I don't think the Habs are there. We're not there to try to get player loaned to us. We're trying to acquire a player that can actually play with that team in the future, not just this season. Second player on the Utah, like I said, was Barrett Hayton. Barrett Hayton is 25 years old, so he fits that core age. He has only 1 season left at 2.65 million, but he is still an RFA after the season, so the team would still have control over him. The difference with Barrett Hayton is that he's not as productive offensively. He had like 40 something point last season. It's still decent, but it's not like explosive offensive numbers. But in the face-off dot, he did win 54% of his face-offs, and he also kills penalties, which is something that we actually need. So I think out of the 2, Barrett Hayton is definitely the player that I would acquire, but I think the cost for a player like that can kill penalties, that can win his face-off, that's 6'2", that's 25 years old, that's still under team control, that shoots left, it's going to be a lot. It's going to cost you a first, a second, a prospect. It's going to cost a lot. I would pay it, but I don't know if the Habs are willing to pay it, though. And the next player on that list is a player from the Vegas Golden Knights. We're talking about William Karlsson. He's another guy that is average in size. He's like a 6-foot player, but he has 2 more years at 5.9 million, being a 32-year-old player and also a Stanley Cup winner. So that has to have some weight in the balance. We're talking about a guy that's winning 58% of his faceoffs, and he also kills a ton of penalties. I think he would not cost as much as a player like Barrett Hayton because first, he's not a young player, and also he only has 2 years. So you don't have control on him after that. And he's also going to be like 34 or 35 years old. So how much you want to resign him after that, I don't know, but it depends how much you produce, I guess. But we're talking about a player that's been very productive for the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think he could be very productive as a second-line center with the Montreal Canadiens, but also help in the face-off dot and also help in the penalty kill. So I think for me, considering the age, the salary, and everything, I don't think he would be as expensive as other player on this list, but I think he would be one of the best players to acquire because first, you're not going to pay as much to get him, but also you're going to get a very, very good player in return. And Vegas is one of those teams that is always like on the verge of busting the salary cap, so they need to move out player all the time. And I think we could actually take him and use him. Yeah. And the next player on that list is Pavel Zacha, and we're talking about a player from the Boston Bruins, so I'm not sure if the Boston Bruins are really willing to help the Montreal Canadiens get better and fill that hole at the second line center? I highly doubt it. It's not like we're trading picks and picks. They're basically trading to make us better. I doubt they want to do it, but still, it's an interesting player. We're talking about a guy that's 6'4". He's a left shot. He's 28 years old. He still has only 2 years on his contract at 4.75 million, and he's also winning his faceoff at 53%, and he kills penalties. So I think he's the type of player that's going to cost a lot to acquire. First, there's going to be a premium because of the fact that he's a Boston Bruins and we are the Montreal Canadiens, but also because he's a 6'4" player with a good contract, good in the faceoff, kills penalties. I've had 3 good seasons back to back to back. So I think he's going to cost a lot. He's a left shot. He's big. He's got everything. So it would take like a first and a prospect, maybe a second on top of that. I don't know. I would probably do it. I think depending on the price, obviously. But if I have to give like a first and let's say Owen Beck, I think I do it. But I'm not exactly sure yet. But he's one of the options available for the Montreal Canadiens. Next player, we are talking about Bo Horvat. He's a left shot center. He's big, he's heavy, and he plays like it. He wins all of his faceoff at like 58% in the faceoff dot. He kills penalties. He's going to cost a lot to acquire, but also the guy is a 30-year-old player. He still has 6 years at $8.5 million. So that is a lot of money for the Montreal Canadiens to absorb. I don't know if it's doable. Obviously, some capologists in the organization can get very creative with money and find ways to make it work. But we're talking about probably the best fit of all those players because he's already big. He's already like 30 years old. So he's a guy that has experience. He wins his faceoff. He kills penalties. He's heavy. He scores like 50 to 60 points every season. He scores a lot of goals in the bumper and he's good defensively. So you're getting basically the perfect fit for the Montreal Canadiens, but the cost to acquire him would be enormous. We're talking probably about like first and seconds and prospect and probably one of your best prospect, like players like Michael H. You're not gonna get out of a trade with Bo Horvat with, I don't know, Owen Beck or Kapanen. That's not going to work. You're going to have to give something to get something. And in that case, it's probably worth it because he signed for 6 years. But nonetheless, we're talking about a very good fit, but a very expensive player to acquire. And next player on the list is Ryan O'Reilly, another left shot defenseman with size, with age too, because we're talking about a guy that's 34 years old with still 2 years on his contract at 4.5 million. So a very, very easy contract to absorb. And in 2 years, it's done. I think he's a little bit declining right now. Like the age is probably getting in a little bit, but we're talking about a player that still has like 50 something point last season. He has 56% win in the faceoff dot. He kills penalties, but less than he used to. Like he killed probably under a minute every single game. So it's not that much, but I think in terms of player to acquire, it wouldn't be that expensive because first we're talking about Nashville. It's a team that will probably want to get rid of him, not because they don't want him, but because they're probably still rebuilding. I don't see a world where Nashville is competitive this season. So if they can get something good for him, then why not? But the thing is that there might be like a little bit of a war to acquire him, but I think you can get out of it with like a second and one of your prospect, like Kapanen or Engstrom or Owen Beck or one of those players, and then you get a very good player for the next 2 years. It's probably a little bit of expensive for a guy of that age, of that projection, but we're talking about a very good player with a lot of experience. And next player on the list, we're talking about Mason Mctavish, and that is probably the most expensive player to acquire on this entire list because we're talking about a guy that is basically 3 or 4 years removed from being the third overall pick. He's 22 years old. He's still an RFA, so you have control over him, but he needs a contract. He is not signed right now. And the reasons for that, we don't know, but maybe he's asking for a lot and he hasn't proven that much, or maybe Anaheim is lowballing him. I don't know which situation it is, but it's one or the other, I guess. And Mason Mctavish, you're basically acquiring him for what he could be and not necessarily for what he is right now. Obviously, he's been showing that he's getting better. He got 50-something point last season. He has 51% in the face-off circle, but he does not kill penalties. But he is a left shot center at like 6'1", who's a little bit of a feisty, heavy player, which is good. But in terms of price to acquire that player, it would cost so much. First, it's gonna cost you your best center. Probably your best prospect, like a guy like Michael H. Probably, I don't think the Habs are willing to give it Ryan Backer because he's too much part of the future of the team. But a guy like Michael H., I think you have just no choice but to give him, and it's probably going to come with another first on top of that. It's going to cost a lot. Like it's gonna brace a few people's heart to acquire a player like Mason Mctavish. But then you have center line of Nick Suzuki, Mason Mctavish, and then you have maybe Kirby Doc or New Hook, and then you have Jake Evans on the fourth line. So you get a very, very solid center line, and we also have a very, very solid back end on defense. So I think it would be the best acquisition we could do, but it would also be the most expensive one. And then you have to sign him to that contract. And I don't know what he wants, but if he wants like $8 million and he hasn't proven anything yet, then I don't know. Next, after that, we have two players from the Seattle Kraken that I think they would be willing to trade because they have players like Shane Wright who are going to have to move up in the lineup at some point, and they also have Matty Bernier, so they don't really need a first or 2C because they already have it. So they have players like, I'm not sure he would be the best player to acquire because of the contract, but we have Chandler Stephenson, who's a left shot player. He's like a 6'something player, 31 years old, but he still has 6 years at $6.25 million. So that's a big contract. It's hard to absorb, but it's also a big contract for what he's put up in the last like year or so. In the faceoff circle, it's 52%. He kills penalties. I'm not sure he would cost that much because right now, the stats are not on his side for at least for the salary that he's commanding. But like, you're basically taking a bet. It's a little bit like the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation where he was terrible in Los Angeles and then he moves to Washington and all of a sudden he's really, really good. Stephenson was very good with the Vegas Golden Knights. So now he's bad with Seattle, but Seattle as a whole is bad. So maybe he's better if he plays for the Montreal Canadiens, but it is a risk. But nonetheless, you're getting a player of some value. You're getting a player that can play defensively, maybe not last year, but the years before, and can kill penalty and can win his face-off and also put some points on the table. The second player from the Seattle Kraken, like I said, is Jared McCann. We're talking about a 29-year-old player, $5 million for the next 2 seasons, so very easy contract to absorb. The thing is that he's not really a center. He doesn't play center and he doesn't take that many face-off, and the few that he takes, he doesn't win them. So he took like 244 season last year, and he won like 45% of them. So it's not exactly what I call a natural center, but it is what it is. The guy still kills penalties, and in terms of offensive production, we're talking about a guy that's putting like 60 to almost 70 points every season. He's very, very good offensively, but I'm just not sure if he's the player that we need. We actually need a player that shoots left, like he does, but also kills penalties, also wins his face-off. Like, we need somebody that can do a little bit of everything. A guy like Bo Horvat or William Karlsson, because they can do all of this. They can put point on the table, maybe a little bit less than Jared McCann, but they can also do the other things that Jared McCann can't do. But nonetheless, he would be a good player to acquire. I'm just not sure if he's the ideal fit for the team. So I'm not sure I would pay the price that he's commanding. Like, obviously, to acquire Jared McCann, it would cost a lot, right? The guy has been putting like 60 to 70 points every season, so it's going to cost you at least your first or Michael Hage or whatever they want. I don't know. I'm not willing to pay that price for Jared McCann. And the next player on the list is Brayden Schenn from the St. Louis Blues. Considering the Habs, they just trade player for player with the St. Louis Blues. They probably have a good relationship to trade again. And Brayden Schenn is good. He's not a perfect fit, though. He's a guy, first, he's a left shot. He has decent size, but he's 34 years old, and he still has 3 seasons at $6.5 million. He wins 52% of his faceoffs, but he doesn't kill penalties, or at least really not that much, like 30 seconds or something under that. But the thing is also, St. Louis, I'm not sure they're willing to trade that guy. First, he's their captain, so I don't know why they would trade their captain for when they're trying to compete. They were a playoff team last season. They're probably not trying to not be a playoff team this season. So I don't think they would trade him, but I think if they were to, what would it cost to acquire a player like that? I don't think it would cost that much because of the salary for the next 3 seasons, the age, and the fact that he's been slowing down. He's been consistently in the 50s or something around that. So not the most productive player, not the best defensive player, just a left shot that can win faceoff. So he would fit at the second line, but it's not an ideal fit. I would not pay a lot to get him, but maybe the Habs would. I have no clue. And next, we are moving to Columbus, and we are going to try to acquire a player like Cole Sillinger. We're talking about another player that's a left shot, a heavy player, a player that used to be physical, that isn't that physical anymore for some reason, but I think he would gain to be more physical, but I think he's a little bit of an underrated player. First, he hasn't had the greatest season in the last couple of years, but he was still on pace for 40-something, like 41, 42 points last season, which is not bad, but he hasn't proved himself to be a second-line center. He hasn't proven himself to be a center at all, so it's probably not the ideal fit, but I think he is one of the options. Probably not the best option, but if like nothing else work, I think you could acquire a player like that for not that much because he seems to be the player that needs a change of scenery, that needs to be under a new coach or a new team to actually maybe not explode, but at least improve his overall game, get back to the player that he was before he got to the NHL, be more physical, be more involved in the play. But we're talking about a 22-year-old that still has only 1 year on his contract at 2.25 million. So not something hard to acquire. He's 46% in the face-off dot, and he kills penalties a little bit, like about a minute 30 every game. So like it's not that much. He's probably not the best penalty killer out there, but he's putting the effort in to actually do it. We're also talking about a player that, in terms to acquire, it would probably cost maybe a second and a B prospect or something like that. It wouldn't cost that much because he hasn't done that much at the NHL level, but there is still some potential there. The reason why I'm not such a fan of that acquisition would be the fact that it would be just another bet. It's a bet like Kirby Dach was. It's a bet like New Hook was. So if we're taking another bet like that, like at some point one has to work. Maybe Kirby Dach does work in the future. We don't know. Maybe he can stay healthy and he is the solution at the second for the second line center. No clue. Possible, probably not likely. But Cole Sillinger is probably not a second line center either. But I think he's maybe worth the try. If everything else fails, maybe try with Cole Sillinger. That's what I'm saying. And if we're going to try something, might as well try with Connor Geekie in Tampa Bay. Obviously, I'm not sure Tampa Bay is willing to trade that guy because he was the main return in the Mikhail Sergachev trade. But at the same time, they don't have that much space for him in their top six with Kucherov and then Braden Point and Hagel and Genzel and Cirelli. So where does he fit? There's no space for him on the left side. There's no space for him in the middle. So where is he going to play? Last season in the NHL, he played like 11 to 12 minutes a night. So really not a lot of time to show what you can do at the NHL level. But we're talking about a guy that's 6'4" with a ton of skill, skates well, not the best skater, but he skates well enough. Very good hand, very good vision, very good skills overall. Still 2 years on his ELC, so like between $800,000 to $900,000 a year. So very easy to fit under the cap situation. But we're talking about a project because the guy is 42% in the face-off dot, and he does not kill penalties, so he doesn't do much of what we need. But he's a player. It's another bet like Kirby Dach, basically. It's the same type of bet, same type of player. Big guy with skills, and you hope he will produce at the NHL level and win his face-off. So it would be expensive to acquire that player, and I'm not sure Tampa Bay would want to do it, but maybe they would because of the fact that they don't necessarily have the space for him in the NHL. Like, he's going to be stuck on the third line or simmering somewhere in the bottom six. So is that ideal for him? I don't think so. Is that ideal for them? A team that's trying to win the Stanley Cup again, that is in a win now mode and not a let's try to rebuild mode. I don't think he's the ideal player for them. So maybe it would be good for us. So at that point, like, what can you give them? You can't give them futures. They don't care about future, and Connor Geekie is a future basically. But you could maybe give them future in the fact that they would trade it at the trade deadline to acquire some win now players. So you give them assets, in return you get Connor Geekie, and in the future they will be able to acquire players that they need to take a step and like try to contend in the Stanley Cup playoff. So yeah, that was the last player. Basically, I think my favorite of all those players is probably William Karlsson. I really like William Karlsson and what he could bring to the team. Mason Mctavish would be great too. I think he's more proven than a player like Connor Geekie. So that would probably help the fact that I'm not sure we want to build another guy that's not there yet. Probably we want a player that's almost there and just give him the extra push. That would be better, but it's just the cost of acquisition for a guy like Mason Mctavish would be so much. But even a guy like Ryan O'Reilly wouldn't be so bad. It's just I'm not sure if I would trade for him at the beginning of the season or I would wait a little bit and see how Kirby Dach does. Like, because at the same time, you can't really trade Kirby Dach in the trade that you're trying to acquire a player because like he's at the lowest of his value that he's ever been. The guy was a third overall pick at some point in his life, but he has not played like it. He's always injured. He was terrible defensively last season. He was terrible offensively last season. So what are you trading? You're trading like nothing when you're trading Kirby Dach. Basically, it's a cap dump. So yeah, So basically, I think William Karlsson, Pavel Zacha would be great too. There's even players like Mika Zibanejad. I don't think they would ever do it. He also has an NMC or modified no trade clause, and the guy has like 5 more years at 8.5 million. He slowed down last year, but everybody slowed down last year in the Rangers. He's 32 years old. He kills penalties, wins over 50% of his faceoff. So and you would probably not cost that much to acquire because of the salary to the age ratio and the fact that he had this slow season last year. So maybe they're willing to take that risk, but we're talking about another right shot anyway. So is he really the ideal player? I don't think so. But it's not necessarily a bad player to acquire. It depends on them. I'm not the one who's going to make that decision. I'm not sure if I would do it, even if it would cost like a third round pick. I don't know. Would like to see. Anyways, the point this season is to make a lot more videos like that where I'm just talking about the Habs, focusing on the Habs. I want to focus about the Habs because I love the Habs. I love hockey. I love prospect. I love the Montreal Canadiens. And I want to talk a lot more about them. So basically, once a week, I'm going to try. I'm going to try once a week or at the minimum once a week to make videos like that talking about the Habs. I'm not going to make crazy videos with animations and all kind of, the thing that I usually do in my prospect videos because it just takes too much time. But like a talking head video like that where I can just talk to you guys through the camera is really easy to do and to put together after all. So I'm going to do a lot more like that. I'm going to do also videos where I'm going to focus on the NHL. So there's going to be more content this summer, but a lot more relaxed, chill content where I'm just talking like that. And obviously it's not going to be only my face in the video. There's going to be some, I'm going to put the necessary stuff on the screen, but it's just not going to be filled with tables and animations and graphics and all the good stuff that I do sometimes when I feel like it. All right, so that is it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please give a like, give a subscribe. There's also this new thing under the channel in the bar on your phone or on your TV or your computer. There's this thing called hype. If you press that hype button, it gives points to my channel, and then when I reach a certain level of point, it pushes my channel to new people. So if you think that I'm worth listening to and that other people would like to listen to what I have to say, whether it's Habs fan or NHL fans or whatever, or prospect fans, well, click that hype button. It's going to help push my channel a little bit more and gain subscribers and more views and roll in money. Not exactly, no. I'll do like $30 a video. All right, cool. So hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one. Peace.